Guten Tag, WAP. This is Mr. Liniger. Let's make history today as we go over Unit 1, Day 3. But let's start off with our daily punishment. Can February March? No, but April May. It's a calendar and I just used like 3 months. Oh my god, that's genius. All right, kiddos. Today we're going to talk about Islam and Africa. Key terms: Mali, Sundiata, Mansa Musa, Songhai, Soni Ali the Great, Askia Mohammed, the Swahili city-states, Zimbabwe, and Dhow ships. We're going to talk about the political developments in post-classical Africa, the economic developments in Africa, and the impact of the slave trade. This is how the Africans traded slaves from their rivals, from enemy tribes, and how the Muslims would buy slaves and would trade with African slaves. European slavery, which is the biggest one and by far the worst one, we'll talk about next unit, and pretty much the rest of world history. So the big trade route that is used in Africa are going to be the Trans-Saharan trade route. That's the most important one. Also, they use the Indian Ocean in East Africa. For the Trans-Saharan trade route, the impact of camels will allow for the trade in the Trans-Saharan desert in Northwest Africa. It's going to allow for communication there, and it will allow for Islamic merchants to go there. Last unit, we talked about how they had the first Islamic African civilization in Ghana. We're going to have some more African civilizations in West Africa this unit. The first one is Mali. Mali was a civilization pretty close to Ghana in West Africa. The first person you should know there was Sundiata. He's considered the founder of the Mali Empire. He's called the Lion King, and this Disney movie, The Story of the Lion King, is based off of his life. Although he was not a lion, he was a human being. After he died, the ruling elite will convert to Islam. The most famous ruler you need to know from Mali, and you should definitely know him for the class, is Mansa Musa. He was Sundiata's great-grandnephew. He reigned from 1312 to 1337. He's going to be the first non-Arab to go on his pilgrimage to Mecca. He's a ruler, so he has to bring wealth with him to give to the mosques in Mecca. He's going to bring so much gold with him that it's going to cause 25% inflation in Egypt alone. When he returns to Mali, he's going to bring with him Arabs who will create the first universities, hospitals in Africa. Mansa Musa is going to be responsible for creating the first hospitals and some of the first universities, like the University of Timbuktu in Africa. The Mali Empire will be very wealthy because they'll control the Trans-Saharan trade route. They'll control gold and salt. They'll tax almost everybody going through the Trans-Saharan trade route. They'll support huge caravans that will link Mali with North Africa. Mali will decline. Factions will cripple the central government. There'll be military pressure from the neighboring kingdoms and desert nomads. And eventually they're going to fall, and we're going to have a new civilization that's going to dominate Western Africa, which will be Songhai. So let's talk about Songhai. Songhai is going to rise. It's going to be founded by Soni Ali the Great. He's going to build cavalry and a war fleet. He will fight Mali. They were around the same area, but Songhai will be the ones that conquer Mali. He'll conquer Timbuktu. He saw Muslims as a threat. Ironically, after Soni Ali dies, Askia Muhammad is going to seize power. He was a devout Muslim, and he's going to make Songhai a Muslim dynasty. He's going to be declared Jihad of the Sudan, which is right by Egypt, so they're going to be pretty big. He'll launch jihads or religious-based wars against other areas in Northwest Africa. He'll build a centralized state, and he'll mimic his state off of Muslim dynasties. He'll use Muslim jurists, Umas, as advisors. In Songhai, they will still maintain some of their tribal rituals, like the sacred drum, sacred fire, and local indigenous dressing. They will trade things like cola nuts, which are disgusting. Somebody gave me those years ago. They're so bitter. Oh my God. They'll also trade gold, slaves, and they'll trade for things like horses, salt, luxury goods, and finished goods. Songhai also will fall. In the Civil War, there'll be In the 16th century, there'll be a civil war. You'll have things like drought and desertification, which will hurt the economy. Disease will spread. And then eventually the Moroccan Empire is going to invade and destroy the state in order for it to control the gold trade. So the gold trade was pretty important in these West African civilizations in Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. Let's talk a little bit about African slavery because you should know what it is and what it's not. In African slavery, a lot of times they would get slaves when they fought an enemy tribe, and the slaves were captives of war. They were enemy soldiers. You can also become a slave if you're a debtor or a criminal. They're often used as domestic labor sources, agricultural workers. There is not a social stigma attached, and it was not because of your race. Often you could receive your freedom, and your children did not become slaves. Often you could become part of the other tribe. So this was nothing like the European slavery of the Africans. However, one of the bad things that happens is the Africans will trade their slaves to the Arabs, and the Arabs will not use them as nicely, just like they do the same thing when they trade them to the Europeans. The African slaves will go all the way to the Middle East, along the Trans-Saharan trade route and the Red Sea. Between the 11th and between 750 to 1500, 10 million slaves will be transported by Islamic merchants. The slaves will also be, the Arabs, the Muslims will also take slaves from Eastern Europe. The Eastern European group that lived in Eastern Europe, the ethnic group that lived in Eastern Europe, are called the Slavs, and that's actually where we get the word slaves from, which is super ironic because they were white. But you will see slavery. You'll start to see some of these Arab traders getting a lot more slaves from Africa. A lot of times there will be slave raids against smaller states, stateless societies, tribes. In the Quran, it says that Muslims could not be used as slaves, but oftentimes, people are human. They would ignore this because it's about making money. Let's talk about our next African civilization, the Swahili city-states. These city-states were located on the coast of East Africa. Each one of them was independent. They were a city-state. They're going to be a combination, a blend of both the Bantu, indigenous Africans, and the Arabs, because the Arabs are trading along the Indian Ocean. Some of the Arabs will create diasporic communities in these city-states. They'll intermarry with the African merchants who will convert to Islam. You're going to see a blending in culture. Swahili actually is an Arabic term that means coaster. And these Swahili city-states are going to dominate trade along the Indian Ocean from the African perspective. The chiefs in these city-states will gain power through taxing trade on ports. They'll control trade along the interior, in the coast of Trans-Saharan, like for slaves, gold, ivory, and spices. They'll exchange their goods for finished goods like cloths, dye, and luxuries. They'll trade along the Indian Ocean as well. They'll use dhow ships, those ships that are able to navigate the monsoon patterns along the Indian Ocean. The ruling elite in the Swahili city-states will be Muslims. They'll convert to Islam. This is going to lead to closer cooperation between the Muslim merchants in India and the Middle East, and the Muslim merchants and leaders in the Swahili city-states. You're going to see some intermarrying, and you're going to see some diasporic communities being created. Lastly, let's talk about Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is going to be in Central Africa. It's located in wooded and grassy savanna area. It's going to be rich in minerals, especially copper and gold. Zimbabwe will be a powerful kingdom in Central Africa that will rise in the 13th century, 1200s. The kings will have a lot of wealth. They'll organize the flow of gold, ivory. They'll trade things like slaves. One of the big sources of wealth in Zimbabwe will be their cattle, cows, moo. And they'll trade with areas like the Swahili city-states. So another regional power during this time is going to be Zimbabwe, along with the Swahili city-states, Mali, and Songhai. All right, guys, that's all I have for you for today. Until next time, deuces, 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 yeah. Later.